How did a drone launched hundreds of kilometers away sink a Russian freighter in the middle of the Caspian Sea? The Port Olia 4 wasn't just any ship. It was hauling Iranian-made drone parts critical to Moscow's Shahed program. Yet somehow, 12 UJ26 ER UAVs managed to find it, strike from 4 directions, and push it beneath the surface by 1432. In this video, we'll uncover the mechanics of that impossible strike, how stealth composites, relay drones, and satellite mapping made distance irrelevant. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. How could a drone travel hundreds of kilometers inland through some of the most heavily defended airspace on Earth and strike a target believed to be untouchable? That question haunted Russian analysts the morning Port Olia 4 disappeared from maritime tracking systems. The ship had been anchored inside the Vula-Dawn shipping channel on the Caspian Sea, roughly 800 kilometers from the nearest Ukrainian line. It carried more than 5,000 tons of cargo supplied by Iran, avionics modules, power units, gyroscopic sensors, and rocket ammunition bound for Russian Shahed production sites. The cargo was essential, the route secure, and the geography impenetrable. Or so Moscow thought. For months, Ukrainian intelligence had been mapping the Caspian's rear logistics operations with radar satellites orbiting thousands of kilometers above. Unlike optical systems that depend on clear skies, synthetic aperture radar cut through clouds and darkness. Every pass produced composite radar images showing hull outlines, anchor positions, and movement patterns. Analysts noticed Port Olia 4 followed a precise rhythm, anchoring at night, repositioning by dawn, and taking supply barges twice a week. The task wasn't to find the ship, it was to strike it without warning in waters where even NATO aircraft rarely ventured. By early August, the plan centered around 14 long-range UJ26 ER drones operating in coordinated phases. The aircraft's endurance approached 1,200 kilometers thanks to auxiliary fuel tanks slung beneath slender composite wings. These materials sharply reduced radar visibility, letting the drones pass beneath coastal detection grids along the Volga corridor. The operation used 2 additional UAVs as airborne relays hovering at altitudes between 300 and 500 meters, maintaining a digital bridge between the distant launch crews and the attacking swarm below. The lower drones skimmed just 20 meters above the water, their engines running on low thermal signature fuel mixtures to minimize infrared tracks. The launch sequence began before dawn. Groups designated Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie approached from separate arcs, while Delta carried decoys to mislead patrol radars near the Astrakhan coast. Each strike path intersected deliberately at angles that forced defenders to react in multiple directions at once. Bow targets aimed for ventilation intakes feeding the main engine. The midsection drones carried semi-penetrating warheads to crack bulkheads without detonating cargo holds. Stern drones hit power relays on the aft deck, disabling pumps and emergency generators. When the first impacts came shortly after 11 a.m., the crew barely registered what had happened before alarms went silent across the bridge. Electrical surges swept through the communications bay, killing onboard sensors and darkening control panels. Fires spread through ventilation shafts, releasing dense smoke that blinded any attempt at counter-damage control. Within 20 minutes, the vessel began listing as seawater flooded multiple compartments. The decoy drones, still in the air, drew Russian patrol boats off course by transmitting false radar echoes 30 kilometers north of the real engagement area. By noon, flood pumps were offline and crew reports to regional command cut off mid-sentence. At 14:32 local time, satellite imagery from the same SAR network that had tracked the ship for months confirmed a widening oil slick and debris ring, marking the vessel's disappearance beneath the surface. Moscow lost not only the cargo, but the illusion that the Caspian Sea offered sanctuary. The strike demonstrated that geography no longer constrained warfare. What mattered was precision data, not distance. Ukraine had extended its operational reach far beyond any prior engagement, without deploying a single aircraft beyond its territory. Yet one mystery remained unresolved. Under heavy jamming, with communications stretched to their limits, how did each drone stay perfectly on target? That answer lay within the UJ26 ER's internal navigation core, the system many analysts now call the drone's brain. What kind of navigation system could steer a drone across hundreds of kilometers, weave through electronic countermeasures, and still hit a moving ship dead center? The answer lies inside the UJ26 ER's hybrid guidance core, a system built not for speed, but survival in a sky filled with interference. Unlike earlier UAVs that depended on a single satellite feed, the UJ26 drew its path from a blend of GNSS and INS inputs. GNSS gave it precise positioning through satellites when signals were clean. INS, powered by internal gyroscopes and accelerometers, kept track of every subtle movement when jammers flooded the spectrum. Even with GPS blacked out, the drone's onboard computer could predict its exact place down to a few meters by measuring its own inertia and course corrections in real time. That mathematical redundancy became its armor. Russian operators expected their electronic warfare to blind anything entering the Caspian approach. When the UJ26s crossed the first layer of interference, the jammers spiked frequencies across every guidance band. On weaker Ukrainian models from earlier campaigns, that kind of disruption meant chaos, loss of control, misfires, or sudden plunges into the sea. But the UJ26 ER handled it like turbulence. Its navigation processor instantly shifted to inertial mode, counting micro-accelerations and roll angles to rebuild a mental map of the terrain ahead. To the operators monitoring from Ukraine, it looked almost supernatural. Drones moving thousands of meters beyond confirmed coverage, yet keeping perfect formation. During the final approach, when radar blips merged with ground clutter and haze hid the coastline, the drones switched from algorithmic navigation to something close to sight. Optical confirmation cameras on the nose fed live imaging data into recognition software that compared shapes, light patterns, and hull outlines against stored signatures. Even through dense smoke, the system detected Port Olia 4's configuration, the raised crane towers, the aft superstructure, the angular shadows along the cargo deck. That visual lock replaced satellite guidance completely for the last 2 minutes of flight, leading each warhead to strike within a square meter of the intended coordinates. Russian jamming networks, still broadcasting at full intensity, might as well have been silent. Each drone was timed to hit at a staggered delay. The goal wasn't to detonate in unison, but to dismantle the ship one system at a time. The first impact crippled power distribution, the next fractured hydraulic lines, and the following hit overloaded the bilge pumps already shorted by flooding. That sequence created rolling mechanical collapse rather than one catastrophic blast, ensuring the ship stayed immobile long enough for the sea to finish the work. Decoy drones stayed active even after the real strike began, circling in tight loops 30 kilometers north and broadcasting false signals that convinced Russian patrols they were chasing an ongoing attack somewhere else. The choreography valued confusion over surprise. Experts studying the debris found remnants of a modular guidance system designed to network with its peers. Relay nodes in the airborne communication drones distributed data packets, so each unit knew the other's positions and timing without relying on satellites. If one link dropped, another filled the gap automatically. That resilience transformed 14 independent aircraft into a single virtual squadron with shared awareness of wind, speed, and angle. Analysts later compared this digital cohesion to the architecture behind the spiderweb operations months later, the ones that reached targets in Murmansk and Irkutsk beyond the Arctic Circle. Those strikes showed the same code signatures and coordination logic, only applied on larger scales. The lesson from Port Olia 4 was blunt. Computation had eclipsed explosives as the real measure of power projection. The drone's brain, the networked, self-correcting intelligence guiding it, was the reason an inland sea once thought unreachable became vulnerable overnight. Which leaves one uneasy question. If Ukraine can already reach the Caspian's logistics lifeline, how far can its range extend next time? Range no longer equals safety. The Caspian strike exposed a new geography of war, where intelligence and data, not distance, decide reach. Operation Trojan Trucks and spiderweb campaigns proved it further. Drones launched from ordinary trucks striking Russia's strategic aviation thousands of miles away. These networked attacks showed that terrain, borders, and even oceans no longer defined defense. The Port Olia 4 strike wasn't isolated, it was a preview of conflict reshaped by computation and coordination. If one freighter deep in the Caspian could vanish from afar, how many hidden assets anywhere else are still truly beyond reach?